All right, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, good Yom Tov. When Rabbi Levi asked me to pick a topic, I figured what's a better topic to talk about Mashiach and Yud-Tes Kislev. And I'm going to want to connect it to the Parsha. I would like to connect it to the Parsha. I don't want to disrupt the other class. So we have the famous letter the Baal Shem Tov pens to his brother-in-law, Reb Gershon of Kitom. Reb Gershon of Kitom was a tremendous Rav in the city of Kitom in Eastern Europe. And a young man, after the passing of his father, a young man shows up looking like a shepherd, looking like extremely simple young man, and with a letter in the obvious handwriting of Reb Gershon's father, who was a great rabbi, penning a offer for this young man to marry his daughter, Reb Gershon's sister. And Reb Gershon is shocked. As a great Talmudic scholar and from a great family, why would his father ever want to marry off his sister, who could have gotten a great Rosh Hashiva, a rabbi, to marry off to this literally simple shepherd who could barely speak Hebrew, who could barely speak Yiddish? And he called in his sister and he says, listen, this is obviously a legitimate letter from our parents, from our father, and you can decide if you want to go with the marriage, go with the marriage. If you want to, I can annul it. There's plenty of loopholes. There's plenty of space to get rid of this agreement that our father has with this young man. So she says, let me meet him. She sat alone with this young man for about a half hour to an hour, and she comes out and she says, I'll marry him. And Reb Gershon is so taken aback, he was shocked. So he said, okay, I'll support you guys, but you have to move out of town. Go to the forest somewhere, you can have a little farm, but you can't live in the city. Fine, they agreed. And this young man, of course, is the Baal Shem Tov, later to be revealed as the leader and the founder of Hasidus. And as it so happens, I actually have a book in my house of letters. The Baal Shem Tov wrote his brother-in-law in a very simple Yiddish, literally what you would call very, very simple Yiddish. Before he revealed himself, what do you want from me? I'm a yosam, I'm an orphan, I didn't have an education. As it turns out, when the Baal Shem Tov reveals himself, the Reb Gershon becomes his greatest student. Reb Gershon is buried here in Har Zaysim in the Mount of Olives. He comes to Eretz Yisrael, and there's many fantastic letters we have from the Baal Shem Tov and Reb Gershon. He becomes literally, you see in this book that I have, the Sefer that I have, you see how the letters start changing from a young peasant boy to a leader of the Jewish people, writing to him about Kabbalistic ideas, etc. In this, one of the letters we have from the Baal Shem Tov to his brother-in-law, Reb Gershon, he tells him, as a gift, he's going to tell him a story of a vision the Baal Shem Tov had when he elevated, I believe it was on Rosh Hashanah, to heavens, and he was able to, all the gates of heaven, all the chambers of heaven were open to the holy Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov goes into the chamber of the Mashiach. And everyone knows the famous story, he goes in and he says, Emasai Ka'asi Mar, when is my master going to show? When is the Mashiach going to come? And the Baal Shem Tov says, when the wellsprings of Chassidus, your wellsprings will spread out. Mashiach says to the Baal Shem Tov. The Holy Ruzhiner, which was a grandson of the Baal Shem Tov's successor, the Maggid, once told over that when the Baal Shem Tov heard that from Mashiach, he started to cry. That's what's going to take to bring Mashiach. We have to take the well springs of Chassidus all the way outside. It was even the Baal Shem Tov, who was the founder of Chassidus, he introduced a whole new way of service of Hashem, the elevation of the simple person, the idea of simcha, the idea of joy, the idea of Yiras Shamayim. They say the Baal Shem Tov woke up Judaism. Until the Baal Shem Tov came, Jews were asleep. The name of the Baal Shem Tov it's a segula. It's a remedy. If someone faints, they say the name of the Baal Shem Tov, because the Baal Shem Tov his whole existence was to wake up Jews. And here the Baal Shem Tov himself is crying because of how hard is it going to be to bring the Mashiach. How hard is it, in football terms, how hard is it going to get over the line? How do we get it's very difficult. And so the Rishon said that there was two students. One student is the grandson, the physical grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. His name is Rabbi of Mezbush. And he didn't agree with Alter Rebbe's philosophy of spreading Chassidus. He fought Alter Rebbe and Alter Rebbe's idea of the spreading, the teaching of Chassidus, the way the Alter Rebbe went about it. And why he was imprisoned for the teachings of Chassidus, the writing of the Tanya, the exposing of such great ideas to the masses. And he felt that it wasn't the way, and he fought the Alter Rebbe on that. And so the Holy Rishon once explained the disagreement. He said the Rebbe Reb Baruch was concerned with his grandfather's tears, and the Alter Rebbe was more concerned with what Mashiach said. Mashiach says that we have to take the well springs out, because that's what we have to do, even if it causes the Baal Shem Tov to cry. So what does this mean? What is it? What's this condition? What is this conversation between the Baal Shem Tov and Mashiach? It seems like it's a casual conversation. He's in heaven. He's going from chamber to chamber. He's obviously meeting different people. And he meets the Mashiach and he asks him, but the truth is that we know, the tradition by Hasidim is, and we know this from the Baal Shem Tov's greatest student, one of his greatest students, the Talmud Yaakov Yosef. The Baal Shem Tov had a special teacher who taught him the secrets of Chassidus. It's a tradition, the teachings of Chassidus. It's not a new concept. And his teacher was the famous prophet known as Achia Shaloni. Achia Shaloni, the Gemara tells us that Achia Shaloni was one of the people who left Egypt. He only shows up in scripture in the time of King Solomon. He's the prophet of the time of King Solomon. He's the one who prophesied about the division between the kingdom of David and the kingdom of Israel. And he is the keeper of the secret. And when the time came, he goes and he teaches it to the Baal Shem Tov. And the teachings of Chassidus is what 10 years Achia Shaloni, Achia the prophet, teaches the Baal Shem Tov. So we see a direct connection from the Jews leaving Egypt all the way to the times of Mashiach. Because it's one idea. And that's why the Baal Shem Tov goes straight to the Mashiach's chambers. Chassidus is not just another idea. Chassidus is not just another teaching, another philosophy. Chassidus is the purpose of creation. And like the Frierdiker Rebbe says that the Alter Rebbe, there's one ladder in Jewish history. There's the ladder of Jacob's dream. Jacob has a dream of a ladder. The ladder is positioned on the earth and is going up to heaven. The angels are going up and down. The previous Rebbe says, I think he's quoting the Alter Rebbe or the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Rebbe Chabad. That's the same ladder that the Baal Shem Tov took and put up a second time. That's the way we connect heaven and earth. And the Alter Rebbe showed us how to climb the ladder. We have a ladder, not always do we know how to climb the ladder. And the whole idea of why the Baal Shem Tov came to the world is not just to introduce or to wake up the Jewish people, but it was to wake up the Jewish people to the idea of Geula, of redemption. And so therefore it's not possible to separate Yud-Tes Kislev from Mashiach. The whole reason why the Alter Rebbe went as far as he went to the extent that he was teaching. The Alter Rebbe himself once was walking as a student of the Maggid, and he finds a colleague of his teacher, the Maggid, who is also a student of the Baal Shem Tov, and he's picking up off the floor a piece of paper, and he looks at the piece of paper, and it's the writings and the teachings of Chassidus, and he got very upset. Chassidus is not being protected, it's not being guarded, it's floating on the floor, and he was very upset. And this holy student, by him being upset, caused a big turmoil in heaven. And he went, and the Alter Rebbe was there. He was a young student. He was probably in his early teens, mid-teens. He goes to the student of the Baal Shem Tov and tells him the famous example of the diamond in the king's crown. That there's a king who has a son. And his entire succession is that his son is going to take over and continue in his ways, and his son becomes ill, deathly ill, and he's told that the only solution, the only medicine that he could survive is if we take the stone out of the crown, we grind the stone, and if a drop of that stone mixed in water will go into the prince's mouth, he'll survive. And we don't care if 99% of it spills out on the floor. But if the one little bit goes into the mouth of the prince, he will survive. And he says that's the idea of Chassidus. When you want to get to Geula, redemption is not just we're going to wake up and Mashiach is here. Redemption is a total change. It's a culmination of it is the reason why God created the world. In the first day of creation, the Torah tells us the Ruach Elokim merachefes al pnei hamayim. The Spirit of God was hovering over the water, and it's brought down in the Sfarim, not even Hasidic Sfarim, it's brought down Zen Ruchei Shel Mashiach. I think the Medrash says it's the Spirit of Mashiach. The Spirit of Mashiach was in creation from the first day. When the world was still tohu vavohu, when the world was still chaotic, there was no sun, there was no moon, there was no animals, there was no creation. Just the first day of creation, the Spirit of Mashiach was there. And what's interesting is, it's brought down. It says, the word says, V'ruach Elokim mirachefet. Mirachefet it makes up the words Rapach, Met. Rapach is the 280 sparks of death. And so how could you have death and Mashiach together? Because the whole purpose of Mashiach is to fix the tumah, the impurity. Mashiach is here to take the negative of the world. That's the purpose of creation. The purpose of creation is that for whatever reason God created the world, and when He created the world, He wanted to have a world, a sanctuary in this mundane place, like the Rebbe speaks about in the first Mimer. And the way the world is in a challenging place, where finding God is a difficulty, and a person has to go out there and to find the fire and passion for Hashem, and to go through the struggles that we go through, the life of the Beinoni that Alter Rebbe talks about in Tanya. That is the Rachefes Mashiach. That when a person chooses Mashiach, life, godliness, happiness, spirituality over death and impurity. That's the revelations of Mashiach. That's Mashiach. Mashiach is not just that we're not going to have to pay our bills anymore, that we're going to be able to get rid of our enemies. We won't have it. These are all nice things also. The temple's going to be, that's also nice. The idea of Mashiach is the revelation of God. That the death is going to be transferred to life. It said, one of the verses says there's going to be no more death in the world. That came from when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge. Eating from the tree of knowledge was bringing ourselves into, connecting ourselves to impurity, bringing the challenge. That Alter Rebbe says, the impurity was in the world before. It wasn't our problem. It was in the tree. It was the tree's problem. When we ate from the tree, it became our problem. And that became our battle. Then we have to battle. So that's, in order to bring Mashiach, we have to deal with our inner mirachefet, our inner met, our inner death. And we have to find a way to transform them. So that's why Mashiach and Yud-Tes, and when we celebrate Yud-Tes Kislev, we want to understand what is Yud-Tes Kislev. Yud-Tes Kislev was the Alter Rebbe went self-sacrifice. He put everything on the line, not just his own life, but he put the Jewish people. He put Judaism on line. There's a famous story. When they came to arrest the Alter Rebbe, he had a student. He had a very interesting student. The student, his name was Shmuel Munkus. Shmuel Munkus was all the stories about Shmuel Munkus. He was like the court jester. He was always making, like they say in Israel, balagan. He was always making things complicated. He was always, the Rebbe's Rebbetzin cooked a special kugel. He ate it. He just was making trouble everywhere. But he was really a very, very holy student. And the night that the Alter Rebbe was supposed to be arrested, the Alter Rebbe hid. He hid in the cemetery over there in the city that he was, and he comes back home at night, and he has a knock on the door. And who's there? Shmuel Munkus, the court jester. And the Alter Rebbe was very close to him. He said, "Shmuel, they came to arrest me." He goes, "I know, I heard." So he goes, "What do you think?" So he goes, "Well, if you're asking me, I think you should go to prison, give yourself up to the arrest." He says, "If you're a Rebbe, if you're legit, so nothing's going to happen. And if you're not legit, then you deserve to be shot. Because who gave you the right to take away the excitement of this world? You demanded perfection from your students. You demanded that everyone should sacrifice all their own wants for the want of Hashem. And if that's not a real idea, you deserve to get shot. So it's one of the two. They say the Alter Rebbe says, I'm not sure you're right, but thank you. That's have a conversation with. I'm not sure if you're right. Here you're saying, but he went. But the Alter Rebbe did go. So because the idea is the Alter Rebbe put everything on the line. He put everything. He put Judaism on the line. What does it mean? What does it mean that the Shmuel Mukis said to the Alter Rebbe, who gave you permission to take away the joy of life? We're not talking about the joy of watching a movie or something material. The joy of your own experience of godliness. Until the Alter Rebbe came around, it was all about me. It's about me. How could I be a better Jew? How could God? What could my relationship for God do for me? Right? If I'm going to be spiritual? How do I feel about spirituality? How's godliness, Torah, mitzvahs, world to come? How does that all work for me? What's in it for me? The highest level. The Alter Rebbe says, well, who's talking about you? It's not about you. It's about what God wants. It's about bringing Mashiach. It's about bringing the light. The Alter Rebbe is famous. The Hayom Yom, the end of today. What's today's Hayom Yom? The final Hayom Yom. The Tzemach Tzedek says that his grandfather was known to say, "I don't want your Garden of Eden. I don't want your Olam Haba. I don't want your world to come. I want you." The person could go and say, "It's not about what I'm going to get out of it. It's that there has to be godliness in the world." The Alter Rebbe he risked that. That wasn't such a clear idea. And when he's in prison, he's visited by the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, and he said, "What's going on?" He said, "There's a discussion in heaven about your theories." And he says, "So what should I do?" So he says, "Continue and go more, because this is the way it's going to happen. This is the only way Mashiach is going to come. There's no other way. There's no if you leave 5%, 1% about yourself, Mashiach is not going to come. Mashiach demands absolute commitment. If you want Mashiach to come, you want to have the revelations of godliness in the world, it demands absolute commitment to the cause. And that's what the Alter Rebbe wanted from the Chassidim. That's what the Alter Rebbe wanted from Chassidus. That's what the Alter Rebbe wanted for all Jews. We have to give ourselves over to the cause, to bring godliness and light to the world. And the only way to push darkness out is 100%. 99%, 95% is not going to do. And that's what Shmuel Mukis tells the Alter Rebbe. He says, you demanded 100%. If you're not right, you have to pay the price for that. If that's not the way, you have to pay the price. And we see that a little bit about Yaakov. Yaakov, the Rebbe tells us, the Alter Rebbe asks, what's this whole interaction between Yaakov and Esav? That's what's fresh, right? They come to meet. Yaakov is sending him all these gifts. He's calling him Adoni. So the Alter Rebbe teaches us that Esav is a very high power. And Yaakov is under the assumption that Esav has spent the past 20 years like he did in becoming a better person, right? Becoming Esav the good guy. But when he realized that didn't happen, so he had to try to schlep out of Esav. He had to take out of Esav his powers to try to use that to make the world into a better place. The Rebbe says something very interesting. The Rebbe says that Yaakov went back. The Torah tells us Yaakov goes back. He takes his whole family and he crosses them over the river. And then the Torah tells us, "Vayivaser Yaakov levada." Yaakov remains alone. The Gemara tells us, "Al tikra levada yala lekadmi." He didn't remain alone. He went back for small things, small little utensils, small pots and pans. So of course, the question is, that's what Yaakov is worried about. He has Esav coming with 400 men. He's a wealthy man, and that's what he's doing. He's going back to find the frying pan and the glasses, right? That doesn't make any sense. So Chassidus explains that the Pachim Ketanya, small vessels, with small sparks. Yaakov made a decision at that time. Like the Alter Rebbe, he made a decision. He could have gone to Mashiach. Yaakov was ready for Mashiach. Yaakov could have went in and said, 95%, that's good. I can live with that number. 95% of godliness has been brought out. We've picked up most of the sparks. We've transformed the world enough. Let's go to Mashiach now. Yaakov was ready for Mashiach. He made the decision to go back for every single spark. Not one godly spark could remain. So you need 100%. The Rebbe says in the final number, if there's one place in the world that doesn't have godliness, it affects godliness in every part of the world. A completeness is absolute. And for an absolute redemption, demands 100%. And that's why Yaakov goes back for the smallpox. And then that's why this week's Parsha starts. It says, Yaakov, Vayeshev Yaakov, Eretz Miguri Aviv, Eretz Canaan. He goes to the land of Canaan. The Alter Rebbe says, why are we talking about Canaan? Canaan is not really a celebrated person. Who's Canaan? Canaan, where does Canaan show up in literature before, right? Canaan first shows up, and he's the one who tells Ham that his father's Noach is drunk in the tent. That leads to Ham's molestation of his father. And what does Noach do when he wakes up? He doesn't curse Ham, he curses Canaan, or Canaan. Canaan is going to be a cursed son, cursed grandson. So what's the whole yichus? What's the whole celebration that Yaakov goes to Eretz Canaan? That's what we wanted. Why are we mentioning Canaan? Yaakov seemingly finished a lot of his ordeals of life, right? He finished dealing with his uncle, he finished dealing with his brother, he finished dealing with his daughter's story. He makes it home. The end of Vayishlach is he says he goes back to his father. He makes it to Hebron. Why are we talking about Canaan? And the idea is the same idea, because Yaakov wanted 100%. Canaan represents the avod of Galus. Canaan is the businessman. It's brought down, there's a verse in Yeshaya that says that Canaan is a businessman, like a socher, he's a businessman. What does a businessman do? A businessman invests, a business person, right? You invest. You invest heavy for good return. If you invest a little bit, you get a small return. Sometimes you want to do a full-on investment because the return is that great. So Canaan represents that kind of person. He's ready to go all in for the best return. And that's what it is. That's what Galus is. Galus is, Yaakov chose to continue to remain in Galus because we want to go all in so we could go out to the world, into the world, deal with the problems that we have to deal with. What happens right away? Right after we talk about Yaakov going to Eretz Canaan, we're introduced to the relationship of Yaakov and Yosef that causes the hatred, the jealousy of the brothers, that causes Yosef to be sold to Egypt, that causes that in a few weeks Jacob goes down to see his son in Egypt, that ends up being the 210 years of the exile of Mitzrayim. And from there starts the Yetzias Mitzrayim, the redemption, that's the beginning of the redemption that leads to Mashiach. So Yaakov, you see clearly, Yaakov going to Canaan is the beginning of us going into Galus. And why are we going into Galus? Because it's Canaan. Canaan wants to make an investment for full return. You want to give everything, risk everything to get everything back. And Yaakov wanted everything back for holiness. Everything that Chava and Adam, first man and Chava lost by eating from the tree of knowledge, all those sparks, all the things that the snake put into the system had to be taken out. We have to, if you want the Ruach of Mashiach, you have to get all the 280 sparks. There's no other way. What do we have in this week's Parsha? Before we go into Galus, we have the birth of Tamar's two sons of Peretz and Zerah. It's one of the famous stories of Chumash, how Yehuda is tricked the marriage with Tamar, a relationship with Tamar. She becomes pregnant. She has two children, and one of those children are the father of Mashiach. Right? King David comes from that relationship, and King David is Ben Yishai, right? Mashiach ben David. Mashiach is the descendant of David. When the story becomes revealed that Tamar is really in fact his ex-daughter-in-law, there's a voice goes out from heaven and says, "Don't get so excited. This was my idea." God says this was my idea. Why? Because kings had to come from this story. Mashiach had to come from the story. Again, why does Mashiach have to come from such a story? It's a famous question. Because it's the same idea. You have to invest to get a return. Mashiach is not just someone's going to show up one day and knock on the door and say, "Guys, redemption." Redemption comes with effort. Redemption comes with work. Redemption comes with the challenges that we have to go through. That Canaan has to deal. That Tamar had to do. What did Tamar have to do? She had to disguise herself. She had to change her whole personality to be able to create the children of Yehuda. The Rebbe has a fabulous talk. The Rebbe has a talk about the Rebbe questions the whole story of Tamar. Halakhically doesn't make sense. The story, not really that Halachically today, if that story would happen, if there was the temple standing, there would be no such punishment as burning Tamar. She wouldn't get the death penalty. Never mind, she wouldn't get the burn. Burning is only if she's a Bas Kohen. She has to be a Bas Kohen, and how was she a Bas Kohen? Because she was Shem's daughter. Shem was for sure not alive. There's so many halachic questions to the ruling that Yehuda said that she has to be burned. Not only that, that's not. There's no death sentence for someone who's waiting for her brother-in-law to either get married to or not get married to. It's a law. It's not punishable by death. So why does he punish her like that? Why does he want to punish her like that? So the Rebbe goes into the whole thing and explains it according to the laws of Noah of those times. I don't want to get into that talk. I want to get to the end. The Rebbe says, the Rebbe quotes the Zohar. The Zohar says that Tamar was a Bas Kohen. A Bas Kohen is the neshama, is the soul of a Jewish person. One of the names Hashem is like a Kohen Gadol. It's like a high priest. It's like more about that. It talks about God as being a high priest. Every Jew is a Bas Kohen. Every Jewish soul is the daughter, is the neshama, we know is the female, is the daughter of a Kohen. And we're so connected to God that there's nothing that can separate our status as a Bas Kohen. We're always going to be a Bas Kohen. There's an expression, Elekechem Koyenu. There's a whole Gemara where there's a Tzedoki, I think it's a Gemara in Sanhedrin, I forget, don't quote me on where it is, that someone asked one of the great sages, it says, Elekechem Koyenu, the God is like a Kohen. He quotes a verse, he has backup to that statement. And so that's one of the sources, that God is like a Kohen God. So we're like a Bas Kohen. We're like a Bas Kohen. So Bas Kohen was always connected to our father, always connected to our father being a Kohen. And sometimes we do things that, like Yehuda says, wait, see her, take her out, she has to leave. Sometimes we do things that we have to go to Golus. Sometimes the punishment, the situation calls for us to go into Golus. Whether it's our own doing, whether it's there's a plan for it, whatever we says Golus can't just be a punishment. But sometimes things lead to the way that we have to go, wait, see her, take her out. She has to leave. The neshama has to leave. But when you leave Kisarif, you'll get fire. So Zohar. That's when you get the passion. You want to get the excitement for God, you want to feel the fire for Hashem. Sometimes you have to leave your comfort zone. You have to leave your home. And when you leave your home, Hoitziya, when she goes out, and she goes out to the world, and she's in the world of Canaan, and she's negotiating, and she's trying to figure out how do I stay Jewish, and she's trying to wake up. There's a small Pachim Katanim, there's Esav, there's Lavan, there's the wine pourer, the baker, the slaughterer, right? All the usual suspects. Amalek, they're all hanging out and trying to get to the person's resolve to be a good Jew, right? It says, the Alter Rebbe explains that that our head understands we want to serve Hashem and our heart wants to feel it, but it has to go through the neck. And by the neck, there's a narrow space, and the narrow space of the neck is where all those adversaries kind of try to change our resolve to be committed to Hashem. And we sacrifice, our soul sacrifices itself to come down to this world and to deal with these issues. But that's the only way to sarif. That's the only way you're going to get the fire. That's the only way you get the passion. And when you get the passion, that's when God says that this was my idea. Because this is what I wanted to see in a Jew. I wanted to find the Jew to be alive. And this is how we bring Mashiach. And for this, the Alter Rebbe says we have to go all in. You can't compromise. You can't come in and say that I want to be a Jew only 3 times a week, or 5 times a week, or 6 times a week. I was telling someone, I was living with someone on Fridays. And I told him, I said, it's an interesting thing that in Eretz Yisrael we don't have Sunday. There's a big movement, I don't know if you guys are aware, there's a movement that wants to bring Sunday to Eretz Yisrael. A lot of the Chutzlar people would love to have a Sunday. But you think about it, Sunday is a challenging day. Because what happens usually on Sunday? Everyone goes to shul late, because you don't have to get up early. And you schlep your kids to shul, because your kids are not in school, so you can barely daven also. And then you go to, and then you have a day out, which is beautiful with the family, but usually there's less Torah learned on Sunday, and there's less structure on Sunday, right? So, but that's the Apka day when you have to. These are all important things to go out there and to do these things. But you have to. When Hashem gives you a day off, you should take it to have at least another half-hour shiur or something, to learn something, to do a mitzvah, take your kids on Mitzrayim or something. So there's you can't just have a 6-day week. You have to have a 7-day week. Shabbos is Shabbos, Friday is Friday, Sunday is also a day. Sunday's also day for God. For Jews also. So it's
just give us Sunday off.
And we'll figure it out. We'll make God happy. Yes, yeah. So I think when we come into Yud-Tes Kislev, and we have to understand that the Rebbe says that Yud-Tes Kislev, it's brought down from a letter of the Rebbe Rechavia. Yud-Tes Kislev is the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus. And by Chassidim, we don't play with names. Rosh Hashanah is a nice name, right? It's New Year of Chassidus. New Year's means something. A new year means something's changing. Something's finished, now something's starting again. When we have a Rosh, it's the beginning of something. It's like we know Rosh Hashanah, the new year, on the first of Tishrei, the Torah says, it's brought down, Ein Hashem Lekecha, there's a verse clearly that says, Ein Hashem Lekecha, Bereishis Hashanah, Achris Hashanah, that God is watching Israel from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. The famous question, what do you mean the beginning to the end? He's always watching. Why do you have to say, why is the beginning then? Because there's a new spirit that comes down every single year. A new whole light that comes down every year that wasn't there before. In 5,785 years, the light that came down a few months ago on Rosh Hashanah is a light that was never here in this world before. So there's a new light, there's new energy on every Rosh Hashanah. And if that's the case on the new year of the first of Tishrei, we have to assume that if the Rebbe Rashab said that Yud-Tes Kislev is the Rosh Hashanah for Chassidus, means something's changing tonight. And I was thinking to myself, in Chassidus it goes into something very interesting. There's other Rosh Hashanahs, right? There's a whole Mishnayos Rosh Hashanah. But there's in Chassidus it talks about that there's a certain void on the night of Rosh Hashanah. Until we blow the shofar, this kind of God is in a situation where he's wondering, does it make sense to do another year? You know, it's 5,784 years. Should we do it again? Is it working for me? This is a good plan? So we have to. They say the idea of Rosh Hashanah is, why do we talk about God as King, God is King, Amelech, Hamelech? Why do people say God is King? We need to inspire him to want to be King. He may be thinking this is not the best plan. So we have to inspire that he wants to be King. And there's a void until we blow the shofar and God says, you know what? I'm doing it again. One more year. Let's try it again. Let's see, maybe this will be a little better. So we have to assume that if we're calling tonight the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus, we have to make our case. We're Chassidim. Don't take things for granted. We're Chassidim. We have to make resolutions in Chassidus. We have to ask ourselves, how have we been last year in our resolutions about the teachings of Chassidus, the learning of Chassidus, and the message of bringing Mashiach. Because the Baal Shem Tov was told that Emasai Ka'asimar, Mashiach's coming is dependent on the teachings of Chassidus. What have we done to help spread the teachings of Chassidus? What have we helped to be a Chassid or Chassida? What kind of changes did we make in our life? And what kind of changes we can make going forward in the next year to be stronger Chassidim, better Chassidim? Not that we were bad Chassidim, but we could always improve and make new commitments to make our case. This is that the Alter Rebbe's imprisonment and the Alter Rebbe's redemption was we should get over the line. In this Taka year, I want to bless everyone that this should be the year of Geula. It's a year of redemption. We know that redemption is not just, there's the idea of a collective redemption and the personal redemption. Sometimes you get lost in the collective Geula, the collective redemption, the collective Galus, right? Everyone's in Galus together, and everyone's going to go out of Galus together. That's for sure going to happen. But a lot of us are in our own Galus, our own little exile. That's our own issues, and we have to have our own Geula, our own redemption. I bless everyone that we should have a personal Geula, a personal redemption from our own personal Galus, not just be part of the crowd, the herd. And through that, when each one of us, like Yaakov went back for every single pot, he didn't give up on anything. Like the Alter Rebbe said, he wants 100%. Everyone matters, everyone counts, and everyone's part of the plan. Good Yom Tov, and good Shabbos.